Hey everybody, and welcome to Libromancy, a podcast about the magic of books. I'm Josh, and today I'm talking about Calling on Dragons by Patricia C. Wrede. So let's call on the magic of books. So let's talk a little bit in a non-spoilery way about this book series. This is the third book in the Enchanted Forest Chronicles. So far, this is I think when I was younger, this was more of a favorite of mine. I think I put this, I think no matter what, this book is always number 3 for me because number 1 was just so good. And then I think number 2 was also just that good that it has to stay as number 2. And so this one clearly ranks as number 3, being the third book in the series. I do think it deserves the number 3 spot. Like, it doesn't top number 1. It doesn't top Searching for Dragons. So I think it is what it is. It's going to have to be number 3. It's still fun. It's still got the same tropes and the same play on words and the same play on fairy tales. But she's used kind of a lot of fairy tales, and she doesn't like, Patricia C. Wrede, doesn't like to repeat the fairy tales. And so I can understand why, we're starting to feel a little bit of that, like, oh, this is not as different or not as good as the last one. Now, this one does focus quite a lot more. This one starts with Morwen's perspective. So obviously the first book was Cimorine, the second book was mostly Mendenbar, and now this book is all from Morwen's point of view. It's like, I like that. I like it. We get this consistent change. Really like Cimorine and really like Mendenbar. We get to see a lot of Cimorine in this book, but not a lot of Mendenbar. And I just feel like this one was lacking just a little bit in like something. I'm not sure exactly what. And let's just get into the meat of the story here. These books are small, they're super fast, they're super fun. They're still good. This is definitely like the third step in a good step. It's not, I don't want to let my kind of naysaying on this make you think that this is a bad book. It's still a good book. It just doesn't quite compare to the other 2 books that we've already had in the series. So let's just talk about the plot of the story. The plot of the story is that Morwen finds out that wizards are doing more stuff in the Enchanted Forest. They go find the king. They learn that the sword of the Enchanted Forest has been stolen because the sword is what keeps the wizards from being able to suck up all the magic they want, that Telemaine set up with King Mendenbar, the king of the Enchanted Forest, right? And so the wizards have stolen the sword. They've gotten out. Now we basically start a fetch quest to go find it, and then they'll bring it back. By the time they bring it back, it's too late. The wizards have already kind of encircled the castle with that spell they used in the second book, which that's really nice. I like that we're seeing things from the first book in the second book. First things in the first book coming back to the second book. Things in the second book coming back to the third book. That's a good thing. Again, I just feel like this book kind of lacked a little bit of substance or, more of a plot. It's just, let's go fetch the sword. Well, first off, how did the king not notice the sword was missing? That seems like something you'd want to keep on track of, but if you're not too worried about wizards, and, it hasn't been that long since they've been married, since they just kicked all the wizards out, so maybe a year max, some of these things just surprised me that they were able to get through. So, Morwen and Telemaine and Kazul and Cimorine and Killer and a couple rabbits go on a journey. They find the sword. They're able to get it. They bring it back, of course. Like I said, that shield is in place over the castle. They're not able to get through it, so they just have to wait for Cimorine's child to grow up and use the sword purposefully against it and destroy the sword or destroy the shield so that they can get out, so that Prince Mendenbar can get out. Now, let's talk about some things that were really funny in this one. Of course, these are funny books. They're great. Okay, so first off, you have Old MacDonald had a farm, and he's like, yeah, my dad used to run the farm, but you can't do things like he did. Here a pig, there a cow, everywhere a sheep. Like, he even says those like words, and that's just funny because he's like, yeah, I'm looking to get into the exotic stuff, flying horses and flying this and specialize this. And of course, this is the comedy relief. And the first time I think he was a lot funnier to me. This time he did not. I did not enjoy Killer this time. And you may be asking, well, who is Killer? Killer is a rabbit that continuously eats enchanted things because he's an idiot and he's a dumb rabbit. And you can't blame him because he's a rabbit and he's just hungry. But he's a rabbit with that dyes his hair so that he looks, nice, which is funny in the Enchanted Forest. But he eats some food that makes him a 6-foot tall rabbit, or 7 foot 11 inches rabbit, a 6 foot tall 11 inches rabbit. Then he eats some cabbage that turns him into a donkey, and then he eats something else that turns him blue, and then he eats some invisible dusk bloom and choke vines that turn you insubstantial, right? So he grows wings, and it's just funny because he's always like, I'm hungry, I'm scared. And it's like, well, yes, you are a rabbit, and that makes sense. It's a good thing they had him so that they could find out that the wizards were doing something in the forest, because that's kind of what sets us all off. It's really funny what happens to him in the end, but just throughout, he was so whiny and so cry. I didn't remember it quite as much that he was such a kind of a whiner about it the whole time. But he's there. It's so funny. And then let's talk a little bit about Arona Michael Lear Grinogian Vamist, the man with the column. That's basically what it is. He's got like a news column, and he's like, I'm here to tell you that you're not a witch with the one black cat, then you're not a witch at all. And I am all for traditional magic, and I'm just a huge jerk because I want things to be exactly how they've always been, and I don't like change. And that's basically his platform. Like, it has to be a traditional magic, or I'm gonna get the people against you. And yeah, he's such a jerk. He's such a meanie. I would use stronger language, but I don't know. I don't want to use any right now. So it's hilarious what they do to him in the end. They end up moving the enchantments to Arona Vamist. I'm not going to say his full name every time. That's crazy. So he gets turned into and he floats. He also floats 6 inches off the ground. So he's a floating 6 foot, 6.5, 7 foot tall donkey with wings that's bright blue. And then they teleport him back to his hometown. Maybe he can go join Old MacDonald. It's pretty funny. Yeah, I love the way, with every book they talk about that, doing things the proper way and sticking to tradition. And there's nothing wrong with doing things a certain way. It's that, you stick to it. And it's like, why do princesses eat babies and dragons? Neither of them are useful. It's like, we've never eaten princesses. We've never eaten babies. Like, why would we want to do this? Somebody got the wrong idea. Somebody published it. Somebody put it out there, and it spread and spread and spread until it's widespread and tradition. We get the story of Rapunzel and, being Rachel, that people would just get her name wrong, and they'd say, let down your chair, because there was a chair you would run out, and instead of let down your hair. Pretty funny. I really like that at the end, Kaz was like, yeah, we were able to stop all the wizards that were trying to run away from the castle. And they're like, great, where are they? Let's go interrogate them. And they're like, well, what I mean to say is we ate them all as they were escaping. And it's just like, oh, you ate all the wizards. What about Zeminar, the head wizard? Kaz was like, yep, I ate him myself. Like, he did not stick around because I ate him. It's just hilarious and funny at that time, because they're like, we need all this information. And they're like, nope. I love that Telemaine comes up with a new way to melt wizards so you don't have to carry around a bucket of soapy water, which is a really nice thing. It's very effective. I'm glad this little progression kind of happened. And the code word for that is Arglefraster. That's just hilarious to me that you point at him and say Arglefraster, or think it really hard. That's really funny. So I really do think that Patricia C. Wrede is an amazing writer. She's able to definitely write this and weave these fairy tale stories into her own and make them unique. Again, like I said, this story is just basically a long fetch quest. I didn't really enjoy that. I loved getting Morwen's attitude. I loved seeing the cat's attitude, because the cats are talking and only Morwen can understand them. And I love that we only get her cat side of the story, or her cat side of the talking, because we can't understand what other cats are saying, right? But I feel like she really named how cats talk. So she did really good on this. This is a great book. It's fun to read. That's kind of it for all I have to talk about. There's a couple things that I'm like, well, why didn't this happen? Why did they leave the sword out? Why did Antorel, who's been a failure his whole life at everything he seems to try and accomplish in regards to the Enchanted Forest or Cimmerine, why did he suddenly think, hey, you know what? This time, I'm going to do it perfectly. He's got massive confidence. It's unplaced confidence, but he's got massive confidence. Come on, stop trying to do that. Do something else. I don't know. It's just, why didn't, when King Mendembar saw that they were coming for the forest, why didn't he teleport away? Maybe he couldn't because they had burned out that section of the Enchanted Forest. I felt like, how do I say this? If you're familiar with gaming terms at all, I almost feel like this story was railroaded. And that's not something I normally feel when I'm reading a story, that no matter what happened, this is what's going to happen. But I feel like the ending where King Mendembar is stuck in a castle was almost kind of like a scripted event. Yep, he's going to get stuck in the castle, and this is how we're going to work back to him being stuck in the castle. It's almost like she wrote backwards, wrote the end, and then was like, okay, now how do I make that happen? Well, first they have to get the sword, or how come he doesn't have the sword already? Well, it's stolen. Okay, that's kind of how I feel about this one. It's still fun, it's still good, but I do feel a little railroad. They go from here to here to here, and then they come back. They get closer, they get their revenge. I guess if I was to try and talk about the try-fail cycle, it's really, there's no winning. There's no trying and succeeding, except at the end they get the sword and then they come back, but that leads to another failure. I guess it just didn't feel as satisfying to me as it could have. But that's all I'm going to have to say about this. So that's all I have to say about this. Here's one more thing I have to say, actually. Calling on Dragons. The first 2 books dealing with dragons. Yes, she's making a deal with dragons. She's working with the dragons. Makes sense. Searching for dragons. They're searching for Khazul. They're searching for the wizards who did this to her. Calling on Dragons. We're sticking with the name title, verb on dragons, or with dragons, verb dragons, but it didn't work because they're not really calling on the dragons. Khazul calls on the dragons at the end to be like, hey, let's go fight some wizards and set up our own barrier so the wizards can't get out of theirs. But there's not, does that make sense? There's no, we're not calling on the dragons through the next one. And the next one, talking with dragons, I believe. If I remember right, I have the same kind of issues with that that one. They do a little bit of talking with dragons, but not a lot. And I'm going to have my own issues with the fourth one. I think it's my least favorite of them, but we'll see when I get there. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks to David Hillowitz for the intro and outro music. Of course, if you have any questions or comments, please send those to libromancypod@gmail.com. If you have a book recommendation you think I'd like, let me know. Love to read it. Please give me a like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. And remember to call on the magic of books.